It's a fine winter time. The fineness and pleasantness of winter prevails. Let the pleasantry nature come to our minds too. Welcome once again to News Analysis. News Analysis, a weekly magazine on current affairs. To begin with the main points in a nutshell. Congress sends $801 billion tax cut bill to Obama. FDA rejects use of drug in case of breast cancer. Scores die as drones renew attack on Pakistan's Khyber. Ivory Coast, Bagabo under pressure to stand down. Haiti cholera investigation announced by United Nations. Japan Defense Review warns of China's military might. Another news in detail. Congress sends $801 billion tax cut bill to Obama. Congress at midnight Thursday approved a $801 billion package of tax cuts and $57 billion for extended unemployment insurance. The vote sealed the first major deal between President Obama and congressional Republicans as Democrats put aside their objections and bowed to the realignment of power brought about by their crushing election losses. The bipartisan support for the tax deal also underscored the urgency felt by the administration and by lawmakers in both parties to prop up until the still struggling economy and to prevent an across-the-board tax increase that was set to occur if the rates enacted under President George W. Bush had expired as scheduled at the end of the month. Administration officials said Mr. Obama would sign the package into law on Friday. The final vote in the House was 277 to 148 after Liberal Democrats failed in one last bid to change an estate tax provision in the bill that they said was too generous to the wealthiest Americans, and that the administration agreed in a concession to Republicans. The amendment failed 233 to 194. Supporting the overall measure were 139 Democrats and 138 Republicans. Opposed were 112 Democrats and 36 Republicans. The bill extended for 2 years all of the Bush-era tax rates and provides a one-year payroll tax cut for most American workers, delivering what economists predict will be a needed lift. The Senate approved the package on Wednesday by 81 to 19.
They believe that we should also make permanent the tax cuts for the wealthiest 2% of Americans. I completely disagree with this. A permanent extension of these tax cuts would cost us $700 billion at a time when we need to start focusing on bringing down our deficit. And economists from all across the political spectrum agree that giving tax cuts to millionaires and billionaires does very little to actually grow our economy.
Obama cites Afghan gains as report says exits is on track. The Obama administration plans to further step up attacks on Al-Qaeda and Taliban insurgents in the tribal areas of Pakistan to address one of the fundamental weaknesses uncovered in its year-end review of its Afghanistan war strategy. Administration officials said the increased attack across the Afghan border would help offset the Pakistani government's continued refusal to move against the Qaeda leadership and their extremist allies, especially the Haqqani network. From havens in Pakistan's North Waziristan region, those groups have carried out deadly assault against American troops and have plotted attacks against the West, officials say. In announcing on Thursday that the 97,000 American troops now in Afghanistan have made some fragile gains in the past year, President Obama said Pakistan was increasingly coming to realize that Al-Qaeda and Taliban leaders who have been given safe havens pose a threat to Pakistan as well as the United States. Nevertheless, Mr. Obama added, progress has not come fast enough. The United States, he said, will continue insist to Pakistani leaders the terrorist safe havens within their borders must be dealt with. FDA rejects use of drug in cases of breast cancer. The Food and Drug Administration on Thursday moved to revoke the approval of the widely used drug Avastin as a treatment for breast cancer, saying that the new studies did not confirm that the medicine was helping patients. The decision is causing anguish for some women who worry they may no longer have access to a drug they believe is helping to keep them alive. But some patient advocacy groups welcome the decision, saying Avastin had never been shown to prolong lives and that women with breast cancer need more than false hopes. I understand that today's recommendation from the FDA is disappointing for patients with breast cancer, Dr. Richard Pazdur, head of the agency's Cancer Drug Division, told reporters in a conference call. Please note that these findings are also disappointing for the FDA as well. The FDA decision was issued on the same day that the European Medicine Agency, operating under different rules but with the same data, left Avastin available to breast cancer patients, but in a narrower way than it had before. In the United States, Avastin is likely to remain approved for use against breast cancer at least for a few more months, while the drug's manufacturer Genentech appeals the decision. The company has 30 days to submit its arguments, after which the FDA will decide whether to grant the company a hearing. Other approved uses of Avastin to treat colorectal, lung, kidney and brain cancers will not be affected. So even if the revocation for use against breast cancer is final, doctors could still use the drug off-label.
Are currently under investigation. Primary among them is Avastin, a humanized monoclonal antibody to VEGF. By directly inhibiting VEGF, Avastin may have multiple effects on tumor vasculature, including regression of existing vessels, normalization of surviving vessels, and inhibition of new and recurrent vessel growth. It has been proposed that these effects begin early and continue throughout treatment.
Mark Madoff's name became too big a burden to bear. Last Friday, the publisher of a promising real estate newsletter called Sona Report rose before dawn, scored the news to gather items for the day's edition, and at 9:04 a.m. sent it out to his email subscribers. Unknown to almost all of his subscribers, that publisher was Mark David Madoff, the older son of the convicted swindler Bernard Elf Madoff. Less than 24 hours after sending his email, he hanged himself in his downtown Manhattan apartment, leaving behind a life of burdens and blessings. The blessings appeared to be sustaining him even on that final day, according to those closest to him. They recall a man who was patiently building a new business, talking regularly with close friends, spending time with his wife and 4 children, and even in the last hours of his life, walking his dog, an affectionate Labradoodle. But behind that screen, the burdens of his life as Bernie Madoff's son, the continuous suspicion from the public, the harsh accusations in numerous lawsuits, and his exile from the world of Wall Street were steadily becoming unsustainable. The pressure of the last 2 years weighed on him enormously, said a person who had remained close to him since childhood. He was deep. Before we close today's bulletin of news analysis, let's have a recap of the main points. Congress sends $801 billion tax cut bill to Obama. FDA rejects use of drug in case of breast cancer. Scores die as drones renew attack on Pakistan's Khyber. Ivory Coast, Bagabo under pressure to stand down. Haiti cholera investigation announced by United Nations. Japan Defense Review warns of China's military might. And there we end today's bulletin of news analysis. Be with us in the coming weeks too. Thank you.